Hello and welcome back to El Podo, the Primera RFEF show in what could well be the penultimate show of the season, as well as we've just completed our first legs of the playoff finals as well, which have been brilliant, and I'm sure we'll talk about those later on. I'm your host, Nick Bell. I'm delighted to be joined by Liam Bambridge once again to talk about all things down in the third tier of Spanish football, which, if you haven't been watching, then where have you been? Apparently there's this World Cup on in the north of America, Liam. Why are you tuning into that when you could be watching some Primera F football at the dying end of the season?
Yeah, I have to say, I haven't watched a single minute of the World Cup yet. I suspect that's not the case in your house, but I suspect you haven't watched much more than the Scotland game. I love PFL. And I usually love the World Cup, but I'm not really that excited about it this time, especially not these early group stages. So yeah, my focus has very much been on Primera RFEF over the last week or so since the World Cup's got going.
Yes, definitely. A little tired and jaded today. I am after watching Scotland at 2 o'clock in the morning. I did stay through to Australia versus Turkey as well, but that was just for more of interest than anything. And just since Spain this evening as well, so you've not seen it just yet. A brilliant point for Cape Verde too, which is a massive surprise. So yeah, plenty of football to come there. However, today we're talking about Primera RFEF, and we'll start with some news on some managerial continuations is probably the way I'm going to frame it, Liam, because we've had a couple of announcements, but some of them having more of renewals, which I think actually for this level is quite an interesting tack, especially with the first team, Mirandés. Obviously, they're joining us from the Spanish Segunda, being relegated last season, and they've decided to continue with Ashton Muñeta as their head coach. Unusual, Liam, that they would carry on with a manager who took them down. I suppose Malaga did it with Sergio Pellicer a few years ago. He must have proved himself a little bit in the second half of the season.
Yeah, he did. He wasn't the coach for the whole season. Might have been a different story otherwise. In fact, we might even have them in Primera Federación if it hadn't been for the two coaches at the start of the season. Interesting. One of those, of course, was Fran Justo, who's now Alcorcón, and then Galvan came in from Sevilla Atlético. So there is quite a strong Primera Federación link in terms of the first two coaches of the season. Muneta is de la casa, so to speak. So he's been in the Mirandés system for a while. I think they were really good under him, although he did also have the benefit of some really good signings in the winter transfer window, which usually helped to improve that team. But I think, yeah, I mean, we on the Spanish Segunda show have spoken to Dirk Segbers on a number of occasions, who's a season ticket holder at Mirandés, and he sort of said, well, to be honest, if we do go down, and that was several months ago, we'd like Muneta to keep the job because we feel like he's one of us, and he really lives and breathes this club, and maybe it's time for a little bit of a remodeling in terms of their structure as well. I mean, and as we know that in Segunda they've signed a whole squad full of players on loan, more or less. Are they going to change that slightly? And I think Muneta, as you say, a little bit unusual to see a coach who's essentially taking a team down stay in the hot seat. But you mentioned Pellicer as a good example, and I don't think that Muneta's far off that same sort of status at Mirandés, well liked by the fans, trusted, and rightly, I think, given the chance to put things right that went wrong last season.
Yeah, same with Serrera at Tenerife as well. So maybe there's something in this that means that those clubs can bounce back at the first time of asking. Another manager who is continuing with his club, this time coming up into Primera Federación from Segunda RFEF. Obviously, a good friend of yours, Liam, Adrian Hernandez with Aguilas. He has renewed his contract for another year after getting them promoted. And then one in Primera RFEF as well, maybe, is Oscar Cano, obviously of Zamora, came in just after, I think it was in January, if I remember rightly, and obviously got them into the playoff final, which we're just going to talk about shortly. But tying him down early, not letting him escape regardless of what league they're going to be in, that's a good thing for Zamora, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he came in before Christmas, actually. But yeah, he certainly hasn't been there all season, has he? And I think you have to do that, don't you? You hope that he would stay with you regardless. But if they do stay down, if they don't win that playoff final, then certainly there'll be teams interested. And you would think even within Primera Federación, there'll be teams that have got money to spend and a decent ways to offer him. And I think it's a good show of loyalty from him, because his stock wasn't particularly high when he went into that job. He'd had a couple of poor managerial roles, unsuccessful ones before that, and been out of the game for a while actually, in terms of the Spanish picture anyway. And so I think it's good to see him prepared to commit his immediate future to Zamora, and even though he doesn't know what division they're in, then certainly a good thing to come up with under the circumstances.
Yeah, a really good piece of good news to give to the not just the Zamora fans, but to Zamora players as well. Talk about a confidence boost. Going into the second leg, tying the manager down long term is probably something that would definitely help with that. And then lastly, but certainly not leastly, we were speaking about Lolo Escobar leaving Real Aviles Industrial a few weeks ago. They've moved quickly to replace him, and with quite an ambitious signing, really. Liam. They brought in Iago Iglesias, obviously previously of Pontevedra. He got them promoted into this league last season. Was with Lugo this season, but lost his job as we entered sort of like the final third of the season. This is quite a decent move for Real Aviles Industrial, though, isn't it? It's quite an ambitious signing because he won't be cheap and he's very experienced.
Yeah, he's obviously, as you said, did a good job at Pontevedra, and Lugo's budget was significant last year. I mean, interesting, they've also re-signed Santa Maria, the centre forward, who I know is again attracting a lot of interest. So you get the feeling this might be a situation a little bit like Zamora in that, although I think Zamora stayed more comfortably in their first season in Primera Federación, there are parallels there, aren't there? You survive first of all, and then perhaps you look to thrive after that. And I get the sense that Real Aviles Industrial are ready to spend a little bit of money getting ready for this new season. And certainly appointing someone like Iago Iglesias suggests that. The big challenge, I suppose, as always with teams that are relatively geographically remote, is getting players up there in the first place to actually play. Even if you've got reasonable money to offer, there's probably other teams nearer to the centre of the country where similar rewards would be on offer. We shouldn't overlook, also mentioning Iglesias, we've had another guy who we know from previous experience in Primera Federación be appointed this week at Unionistas, haven't we? Javi Medina
Yes.
becomes the youngest ever Unionistas manager, which I suppose isn't that much of a big deal because they haven't been around that long, Unionistas, but still, at 32 years of age, incredible to think he's already been a coach at Antequera and also at, of course, Betis Deportivo, and that feels like a really good hire to me as well. I'm looking forward to seeing how Unionistas progress under him.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job with Antequera on limited means as well. And I think the move to Betis Deportivo was sentimental for him, wasn't it? Obviously, it's not worked out, so he's got something to prove. And just with today's announcement as well that Ike Munayin would be the other Salamanca manager, it's going to be quite a hotbed for young up-and-coming managers in the historical city, isn't it? So, yeah, keep your eyes on that one. One major player signing I thought we'd discuss, Liam, because I know you've mentioned that obviously so many players move around at this level. It is sometimes hard to keep a track of, but I thought I'd highlight one really ambitious move that I've spotted, and that is of Fran Gallego, trading in Juventud de Torremolinos, obviously survived with them in Grupo 2 this season, and he's going to go play for Real Jaén, who have obviously just come up from the Segunda Federación. That's an unexpected but quite good move for El Jaén. I thought Fran Gallego would maybe go somewhere a little bit bigger, but still, you've got to give them the respect that they clearly have got some pulling power.
Yeah, I suppose if you fancy staying in Andalusia, that's a pretty decent option. And yeah, absolutely, it's a real statement of intent from me that they have signed him. So delighted for them. Hope that works out for him. I think one of the names that caught my eye, as you say, there are perhaps not that many deals going on at the moment, but it'll start to pick up, I think, over the next few weeks. But I did notice Unionistas forward Pere Marco is signed for Nastic. That was one of the teams that were being linked actually with Fran Gallego. Obviously, Gallego and Pere Marco are very different types of player. But I think that Marco will work out really well for Nastic. I think that's a really encouraging signing for them, given what I saw of him last year at Unionistas. And there's also talk of Prohens coming in from over in Poblense. He scored loads of goals in Segunda RFEF. So interesting to see. Nastic had a poor season last season by their standards, and they clearly realised that they need to make some fairly big upgrades in terms of what they're offering this season. And certainly the early signs from them, very early signs, of course, are pretty encouraging. The fact they're even in the hunt for Prohens, I think, has been interesting. Mallorca is encouraging for their fans, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I say, they will be definitely looking to avoid a repeat of last season. So yeah, plenty of player and managerial moves still to come, no doubt, over the summer. So go and keep up to those, keep up with those on El Podo, our social medias on Twitter and places like that, because I know we'll keep you abreast of all the changes. So into the football, Liam. Obviously, only two games to talk about, but two games of huge consequence. Let's start in the beautiful city of Ponferrada. El Torrelín, just over 8,000 supporters pouring into the brilliant stadium there to take on Celta Fortuna. The game ended 0-0, but there's still plenty to talk about, isn't there, Liam, here? The big thing I took from this to begin with is that Celta Fortuna really going full strength for this one, weren't they? Like I say, we've got a lot of returning faces that have maybe been liaising with the first team. We've got some, really brilliant players on display. However, it didn't really prove to give them the advantage going into this one, did it?
It didn't. Yeah, there was plenty to discuss. I mean, I know Tom said last week the first game that he watched for these two teams, obviously played twice already, but I think he watched a game that ended 0-0 and he said it was absolutely dreadful. I mean, you look at the highlights, you look at just over 2.5 minutes of highlights. Included in those highlights was a yellow card. It wasn't even an FPS yellow card, or it wasn't even one of those you're thinking, what's that doing in the highlights? It's a bit desperate, isn't it? I think it is one of those games, to be honest, where you need to have watched the 90 minutes, because some of what you'd call highlights is more about just the way the game went overall. I think the biggest thing I take from this, as you say, given that Celta Fortuna were very strong, was that Ponfe nullified them, and we've seen them do that to many, many teams under Mehdi Nafti over the last few months. I've watched Celta Fortuna relatively regularly for Filial across the season, and they are pretty easy on the eye. They do move the ball really well. They really struggle to do that against Ponfe. In fact, I felt that Ponfe very much had the upper hand for much of this game, and that is a testament to the way Nafti set them up and the way they played, and they didn't allow Celta Fortuna to get going at all. Overall, I think if you look at it, although there weren't hundreds of goalmouth incidents to look back on, Ponfe will definitely feel overall they probably deserve to win this one narrowly.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree with you massively on that one. And the statistics don't lie, do they, when they come to it? And you can see the amount of chances that Ponfe created. Yes, they weren't necessarily testing the goalkeeper too much, but they were, having the better of the advantage. But also, like you say, just letting Celta Fortuna play the ball in front of them. Looking for that opportunity to counter and really stretching Celta Fortuna as well, which, when you're up against a Filial, that's not an easy thing to do because they tend to have quite energetic legs and it seems to be, well drilled. We've spoken on lots of occasions how they like to play, in the same vein as the first team, don't they? So I think it's absolutely brilliant that, as you said, Ponfe really nullified them going into this game. And I thought Ponfe had the better of the chances as well. They had that first chance in the first half, didn't they? Where I think it was Calderon who managed to sort of like slip his way through, get in behind the Celta Fortuna back line, squared it across to, I think it was Borjaval, who just basically knocked it over the bar at the first time of asking. It's those kind of marginal opportunities which are big opportunities, aren't they? In games where so much matters, where Ponfe had been before, that's a big miss, isn't it?
It is. He's on the stretch. He's on his left foot. I get it. But yeah, he will be disappointed he didn't hit the target there. And it probably was, if we're honest, the best chance of the entire game. Calderon was absolutely outstanding in this game. And there's an example of what I was saying about watching the whole game. I mean, he featured on the highlights reel just the once, I think, for that cross. But he was absolutely brilliant. And both going forward, he was tireless in terms of running at the Celta defence, and he also worked his socks off in the other direction. So he was absolutely tremendous for them. And I think also, of course, if you're going to be really good defensively, you need your centre halves to be on it. And I think Underbarena and Genova were also absolutely excellent, and particularly when Celta Fortuna were able to bring on Zamora, who we know is incredibly quick. For the last 25 minutes, you're thinking these two wily campaigners are going to struggle against Zamora's pace, but they played him really, really well. He had one sort of half-decent effort from 20 yards out, which Prieto pretty much catching practice of Prieto didn't really ever threaten to beat him. But yeah, a lot is said, Nick, about Nafti and his teams and how they dark arts and all this kind of stuff. I don't buy it. And I just think ultimately in this game anyway, if you try and take on Celta Fortuna and play them at their own game, you're going to get whipped. That. I saw a performance from Guadalajara earlier on this season against Celta Fortuna, which was very similar, disciplined, defensive, and then basically making the most of it. In fact, I thought Ponfe were more front foot than Guadalajara were in that game overall, and probably deserved to win the game, as I say, and most importantly, kept a clean sheet against one of the best attacking teams in the division.
And that's always what you've got to be guarded of, haven't you? And I think that's where, to give credit where credit's due with Nafti, and, I'll hold my hands on myself. I doubted him after, first 6 or 7 games. I thought, he's clearly out of his depth here. He's clearly, not coming in to do the job that he was expected to do. Why did they even get rid of the previous manager, Vasquez? But the way he's got in there and slowly turned the tide on that team, brought in a couple of faces that, have managed to add a bit of experience, had a bit of grit to the team as well, which I thought was quite important, which we didn't see in the first half of the season. You're absolutely spot on. They are resolute. And the thing is that, ordinarily you would think going away to, what is going to be a tough place. They're going to be playing at the Abanca Barrios for the second leg. They're going to be potentially in front of thousands of Celta Vigo fans for this one, because I know the president has been screaming and saying, get yourself down there to support our B team. But I don't think that phases Ponfe in the same way that it didn't phase them against Atletico Madrileño. They just get the simple things right, don't they? They just play their game, and that all starts with the manager, who we've got to take our hat off to him, don't we?
Totally. And one of the things I love most about Mehdi Nafti is his press conferences, and this week was no different. And he plays to it very much. I mean, he felt, I know he felt aggrieved by the referee performance in this game, because you could see him constantly doing his nut on the touchline. And then after the game, they were like, Calderon had a great game. And what do you think the referee was a little bit harsh at times? And he was like, yeah, Calderon was brilliant. And then they were like, and the refereeing? And he was like, I can't remember. He is brilliant. I mean, people would say, he's just a bit of a pain in the ass, but I really like it. You see so many bland press conferences with Mehdi Nafti, never bland. And I look at that guy and I think, he says the right things all the time. He says, the supporters, they were our 12th man in Madrid, and they can be our 12th man next week. And he always talks about his team as mis chicos, my boys. You know what I mean? He's just one of those. You just think, I would be in the trenches with this guy. I would absolutely run my socks off for this guy. And that's what the team does. And it's not to downplay the fact that they've also got some good players who can pass the ball. It's just that sense, that mentality that he has. And I said on the show last week with Tom, I don't think, as you say, I don't think he's going to be that bothered about being 0-0. I think he'd rather, of course, have beaten ahead, and he knows he's got to go and win the game. And they were saying to him again in this press conference, sort of saying, it's brilliant to keep all his clean sheets. And he went, yeah, keep a clean sheet this weekend, and we're not going up. Unless we score. Do you know what I mean? We've got to score as well. We've got to win the game. It's all about keeping clean sheets, but we know what we've got to do. But I don't think that will phase him at all. And we've seen him do it already. And of course, the confidence of scoring that goal against Atletico Madrileño and keeping it again a very good attacking side at bay. They go into this game thinking we can do exactly the same again. And on this occasion, it will bring the biggest prize of all.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question for you, actually, in terms of the president of Celta Vigo has already said, I think she's called Maria Moreno. She said, get as many people into Barrios as we can. Let's support them. There are rumours that there might be, upwards of 20,000 people there, which, is obviously brilliant to see for this level. They've also given 1,000 tickets to Ponferradina, which I think is brilliant too. We've obviously slated and chastised a lot of the B teams in this division for not giving a decent, or in some cases, absolutely no allocation of tickets to away fans. I think this is maybe why I'm not saying we've got a soft spot for Celta Fortuna, but compared to the others, we maybe tolerate them a little bit more, because they do stuff like this, which enamors, themselves to other people. And it's going to make for a good occasion, isn't it?
Let's look at this carefully here. Two things to look at here. They can't really claim they can't fit any Ponfe fans in. They're playing at bloody Balaidos. I mean,
it's still nice.
We haven't got the capacity to fit them in. Secondly, I seem to remember on previous occasions that they stick the away fans right up in the top corner, even when the stadium's been nearly empty. They say, "Here's your 1,000 tickets. Right, go and watch it from the gods as far away as possible." I would be very surprised if they change that policy this week. I imagine they'll give Ponfe 1,000 fans, 1,000 tickets right up in the gods as far away as possible. I don't think they'll get 20,000. I think that's an absolute pipe dream from the president. But yeah, it's going to be a decent atmosphere. Certainly, there's something more there than there were for that game in Alcalá de Henares against Atlético Madrileño. But I just think that he has instilled into this team, whatever we're up against, we dig in and we fight and we've got a chance in every single game that we play. I do think, I know Slavi hasn't been a massive success since he's gone there. I do feel like, having Keita and Baye essentially trying to sort of fill that sort of centre forward role is not ideal. And I don't think he'll change it this weekend, if I'm honest. But he has got Savage being on, he's got Cortés, he's got players he can bring off the bench who can make a difference. He's going to be solid at the back. For me, I think they've still got a decent chance of going through, even though they do have to win the game, as we say, to go through.
And I think there's a big thing about the occasion as well for this, and we've seen this throughout these playoffs where the pressure can get to these youngsters as well, which I think is a competitive edge for the experience for NAFTI to go in there and be like, the pressure is on them. That they've got to perform in front of their home fans. The expectation is with them. These are kids who, admittedly, they play in Primera Federación and they occasionally get to sit on the bench for the first team, but they don't have that battle-hardened experience that you have got. And I think that's what he's got to play on. And if they go there and snatch an early, one goal, I can see them sitting it out for the entire 90 minutes, happily taking whatever Celta Fortuna could throw at them. And I think that has got to be the game plan, smash and grab. And I think if you get promoted on the back of that, considering where they were, Ponfe will look at this and say this has been an absolutely outstanding season with the very best possible end. And I know between the two of us, we definitely prefer to see Ponfe in the Spanish Segunda next season.
Oh, totally. And as you say, at this stage of the game, at this stage of the season, no one cares how you win promotion. Couldn't care less. You score a goal on 90th minute of someone's backside, or you score a goal in the second minute and sit with everyone behind the ball. No one is going to care. They just need to get up now. They just want to get up and back to Segunda. As you say, an outstanding job by NAFTI to make them into first of all playoff contenders and then playoff qualifiers, and now 90 minutes or potentially 120 minutes away from Segunda. So well played to them. Yeah, we are totally behind them. Really hoping that they can do it this weekend in Barrios, yes, no matter how many home fans show up.
Absolutely. 6:30 on Saturday, this game. I don't think there's any other games I'm trying to think of in the World Cup that will rival this. So definitely tune into this on the weekend. Let's talk about our second playoff final then, Liam. This one between Zamora and Sabadell. A record-breaking crowd at the Estadio Ruta de la Plata, 8,150. And when we talk about these numbers, people might, shrug and go, "Oh, that's not a big number." For this level, this is huge, isn't it? For these kind of towns where, rightly or wrongly, sometimes the home city could be the second team in a one-team city. This is brilliant to see the swell of support that's come behind from Zamora here. It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've seen the same as Sabadell, of course. The first semi-final that they played against Real Castilla was a sellout. We are led to believe, I think there are 9,000 tickets sold already. Yesterday that was, and they haven't even got on sale to Joe Public yet. These are just people who've got season tickets buying tickets for this second leg this weekend or this Friday night in Sabadell. So yeah, I think it's amazing. I think these people will say, well, they weren't here for the whole of the season. It doesn't really matter ultimately when it's come to the big moments in the season. And I do really get that feeling with Zamora. Maybe it's just because we have so many Zamora fans interacting with us on social media. I get the feeling that there's such an excitement about this. And of course, so this should be, because this is a team that's never played in Segunda before and was doing okay, when Oscar Cano came in. And of course, looking at the players they signed last summer, it was a team that was aspiring to be in Segunda next season. But it's one thing to aspire, isn't it? Another thing to be essentially 90 minutes or possibly 120 minutes away from getting there. And there's so much excitement in that city right now. And the recibimiento was amazing, and the noise in the ground was deafening, and it's brilliant to see.
Yeah, again, as much as Sabadell would be a cracking addition to the Spanish Segunda, so would Zamora. It's a shame that one of these will be, well, I say it's a shame. It's a pleasure that one of these will still be with us next season because they are both absolutely brilliant clubs, and both play in a very similar way. I noticed in this, Liam, as well, and even down to the formations that Ferran Costa and Oscar Cano chose. Very, very similar ways, just slightly altered differently. Sabadell playing with a double pivot, whereas Zamora playing with the single pivot in there. And I think that was sort of like lending itself to me to think this is actually going to be a really, really tight game. And the margins were there, to be fair. Is it fair for me to say this was a game of two halves as well? I think, starting off with Zamora being the stronger in the first half and getting off to the best possible start as well, didn't they?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Zamora were I think their only disappointment at the end of this game will be that they didn't really put the game to bed, the final to bed in a way, or pretty much, although you can't really say that with Sabadell, given that they were 2-0 down after the first leg in the semi-final and came back to win 3-0 against Real Madrid Castilla. But I felt like overall they were better than 1-0 at half-time. I thought they completely dominated that first half, got off to an amazing start. And I remember when they signed Mario Losada, I was like, he is the replacement for Eslava. Are you kidding me? But he had an absolutely brilliant game, and when it mattered most in this particular tie, and of course scored an absolutely stunning goal in the first couple of minutes. I mean, Foley has been probably the best keeper in Primera RFEF this season, and it actually starts with a poor kick from him. But Losada is running away from goal 25 yards out and smashes it. And okay, so partly Foley probably gets caught a little bit unawares by it, but it's still an unbelievable finish from there, isn't it?
Yeah, to put it where he put it in the manner that he did, sort of like kind of, you love those kind of shots, don't you, where he takes it straight on the laces and he's just going for power in the hope that he hits the target. And when he does, it's right in that what we would call the stanchion mark, or the post box or the post stamp. And it was just absolutely brilliant finish. And I think that is what set the tone, because immediately you see the limbs of the Zamora fans go up behind the goal. You can hear them chanting. And there was 1 minute where the camera panned to fans in the ground. This guy with this fantastic beard and giant sort of like bifocal glasses, just looking at his mate in absolute disbelief that he'd got off to this, brilliant start. And as you say, Lim, I think going through that first half, the way they counted up the chances, the way they were looking to test Fuoli, the way they were playing through Sabadell, to me, up to 45 minutes, it looked like a foregone conclusion. This was going to be, Zamora putting down the marker early on. It didn't quite go that way in the second half for me. I think obviously Ferran Costa must have had a word at half time, a team talk that said you need to get yourself into this game, because Sabadell did grow into it going into the second half, didn't they?
They did. I just don't know how much. I mean, the only time I've been to the Zamora this season was for the derby against Unionistas, and in that game, I felt like they were fairly comfortable in it, and then started to be a little bit too defensive, a little bit too negative, started to try and hang on to what they had, and it allowed Unionistas back into a game that really they were out of to a certain extent. And I don't know if it was quite as bad as that this game, but I do think they sat back a little bit, especially the second half wore on. What I would say though, on the other side of that, is that how many saves can you remember Fermin Sabron making? Not really any
one or two, I think.
Particular note. There's nothing where you thought Sabadell created this amazing chance they've missed, or that Sabron has pulled off a worldie. So yeah, they definitely had the lion's share of possession, the lion's share of territorial advantage in that second half, but didn't really have much to show for it at the end of it, and were left eventually kind of appealing. I mean, I don't know the rules on this. I don't understand why they appeal for a penalty. I mean, they have monitors on the benches, of course. This is not inside the box. It's clearly not inside the box. I can tell you from the first watch of it, it's not inside the box, but they still appeal for it. And I can only imagine that they know that if the referee doesn't give a penalty, which he's never going to give, he can otherwise give a free kick, and they end up with a free kick just outside the box in a really dangerous area. But yeah. I don't even know how that's allowed. Should it's either a penalty or it's nothing? You can't have like it's not a penalty because it's outside the box, but it's a free kick, which is of course usually their advantage. They didn't make the most of it, but that just seems wrong to me.
Yeah, to be honest, when I was watching this, I thought it was quite harsh anyway. If the ball gets booted at you from about 3 yards away at full speed, it's fairly difficult to move your limbs. And it was the deftest touch on the hand, wasn't it? But yeah, I could see why they would appeal it if it was borderline. This isn't borderline. He's a good 2 or 3 yards out of the 18-yard box in it. And like you say, I agree with you. If it's not a penalty and that's the thing that they're claiming for, bearing in mind as well that the FVS system isn't like VAR. It's not about drawing lines or seeing where it should have been. It is a very simple black and white. Are you appealing for a pen? Yes, right. It's not a pen, so therefore you don't get anything. So I think you're
You can't
absolutely
get a
spot on.
consolation prize for me, can you? It's like I
Absolutely.
mean, you do see it happen. They'll appeal for a red card, and then the referee will give a yellow instead. And it's like, well, no, it's either serious enough for a red card or it's not. You can't sort of fob off the appeal. It was like, we'll give you half an award here. We'll give you half what you wanted, because I don't even know how that works, to be honest. Did they keep their appeal because an offence has been committed, or do they lose their appeal because the offence that they were calling for wasn't committed? I don't even know. I mean, there are things like that with FES
It's
that
a
need to
great
be ironed
question.
out big time.
Yeah. It's a great question, because like you say, they have, in theory, been successful with their appeal, because I don't think the referee had blown for a free kick or anything beforehand,
No.
have they? So would it go back or would it not? You're absolutely right. These creases need to be ironed out ahead of next season. But
And the
I
reason why
think,
it's relevant as well is because there's an incident down near the bench later on in the game, and I think if Costa has an appeal left there, he might well as a high boot on one of his players, and I think that might be a red card. I think they're fortunate to get away with it for Zamora, but he hasn't got any appeals left, and I can only assume, I didn't check back to see where he'd use his appeals, but I can only assume that is because, although he got given a free kick for this one, and also the Zamora players again, when he gives a free kick, the boys saying, well, what are you talking about? So, I mean, we know that footballers don't always know what the rules are, but they're like, well, you can't really give a free kick if you haven't given a penalty. They seem quite astonished by that decision, and it is a rare one, and it'll be there somewhere in the rule book, I'm sure. It's just that we don't know about it, but it feels like a bit of a farce to me that they can just get sort of, like, as I say, a sort of consolation prize for not getting what they really wanted.
yeah, and it would have been interesting if something would have come of it as well, regardless if it would have been a penalty or whether it would have been a wonderful free kick that would have gone in and then basically shifts the balance of this tie ever so slightly. And it's those kind of fine margins and the grey area of the FDS, which will cause a problem in a game like this one year. We had something similar with Nastic and Malaga, didn't we, with the timings and things like that. That causes teams to basically go after him. And this is where the referees aren't necessarily protected enough on that front for trying to do the best job. But yeah, interesting nonetheless. It gives Zamora the advantage. They have a fantastic victory at home in front of those 8,000 fans. Not that it necessarily matters, Liam, because 90 minutes at the Nova Cruz Alta is a very long time, as they say. What have Sabadell got to do here? They've just got to go for it, haven't they? They've kind of got to do what Mehdi Nafti is going to try and do at Barrios. Get a goal at least, and then try and see it out. Because obviously, if they can get that one goal, it brings them back to 1-1, and then they get the advantage, don't they, after 120 minutes?
That's right, yeah. And I think the thing with Sabadell is that they find themselves in a very similar position to Ponfe, because Ponfe have gone away to Atletico Madrileño and won a game to go through away from home. They knew they had to win that game. Sabadell have gone home to the Nova Cruz Alta knowing that they have to win the game. And have done so. So they can both point to previous successes in the situations in which they now find themselves. And in fact, of course, the Real Madrid Castilla advantage was 2 goals, and this is just 1. And what they do if they score that 1 goal, who knows? They will obviously point to their excellent defensive record, and as I say, Fuoli, one of the best keepers, if not the best keeper in Primera Federación, as a reason to sit back on 1-0 and try and play through to the 120 minutes, and as you say, go up as the higher placed team at the end of the regular season. But I don't know. I think that's a dangerous philosophy to adopt against Zamora. And similarly, I don't see Zamora going there and just shutting up shop. They are good defensively, and what Sabadell have to be aware of as well is that they're more experienced in terms of dealing with a situation like this in Real Madrid Castilla, where they won't be so intimidated, I don't think, by the noise or by any sort of overly physical approach from the home side if their tails are up. But I still don't think that they'll sit back and just try and hold on to a 1-goal lead. I think they will look to counter at the very least. I can't see them parking the bus.
No, absolutely. I think this has got a pound for pound boxer style fight written all over it, where I think they are going to try and just hit lumps out of each other to try and get the advantage or to wrestle the win out of this one. It's Friday night on the nights as well, Liam. 9 o'clock kickoff in Barcelona. It's got to be a good occasion, isn't it? And we'll find out on Friday in front of those 10,000 fans. Who will be joining you in the Spanish Segunda. For me, I wouldn't want to pick. I think either of these two sides can still do it, and I just think both of them would be great additions to the league above as well. So, kind of like you can't wish both of them to win, but I really wish I could.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think they're both, as you say, worthy additions to Segunda, and I guess probably overall for Mona, having never been there before, probably get my pick in terms of the heart says I'd love to see them have that chance to play Segunda football, and obviously Carlos Ramos at the heart of it. He's been inspirational for them. He's not that old. I think he's only 32 or something. But he first played for the club over 20 years ago, playing for the Alavines, which is I think the under 10s or the under 11s. What a great story that would be, given that crucial goal that he scored in the semi-final, the penalty in the 97th minute. For him to lead them to Segunda for the first time in their history would be lovely. And I'm not saying he won't be around to do it next year if they don't make it, but I just think that's a great story. And he seems like a really impressive character, and I'd be delighted for him if he got that particular award on his CV. But we shall see. Yeah, listen, Sabadell, great side. Really like Ferran Costa. Got some great players. And of course, they've got Kostia back for this game as well. Their top scorer who got sent off in the semi-final, and so missed the first leg. And even if he doesn't start, he's a player you can bring on, and he might well be decisive in their favour. So yeah, it's a great club as well. Been there this season, really enjoyed it. Tom's also been there and had a really good experience. So it's kind of, as you say, we want them both to go up, but whichever one goes up, we'll be happy, I think.
Yeah, and I think a big thing to take away from this too, for me, given the general competitiveness of the Spanish Segunda at the moment, all possible 6 of these teams that we're talking about, maybe even just to forget about Celta Fortuna in this equation, any of these sides coming up from Primera F at the moment will compete in the Spanish Segunda as well. I don't think it's a matter of that any of them are going to become cannon fodder for the bigger clubs that are up there. I think that a lot of these teams we're talking about, both in the playoff finals, Tenerife, Eldense, who've gone up, they're not going to go up to be whipping boys, are they? They're going to go up there and compete and give a good account of themselves and give a good account of this league as well, which is just obviously growing in quality season on season.
Yeah, I hope so. The worst scenario is always, isn't it? Teams that go up and straight go back down again, and whether it be from Segunda to La Liga, or whether it be from Primera Federación to Segunda, even from Segunda Federación to Primera Federación. Anywhere you see it, you want to see teams cope with that step up, and each promotion obviously does involve a big step up. Clearly, they aren't the biggest clubs, any of them, and they will fall under the Límite Salarial next season, which means they won't be able to spend exactly what they want. But, they've got a core of players there who I'm sure they'll be able to count on, and hopefully be able to make some canny acquisitions and hold their own. Because, the last thing you'd want for any of these clubs, apart from perhaps Celta Fortuna, is for them to go up and then end up having a really miserable time and dropping straight back down to Primera Federación.
Yes, absolutely. And we will find out by roughly 8 o'clock on Saturday night who's going to be in the Spanish Segunda next season and who will be staying with us in Primera Federación as well. So we'll keep you up to date with those two. Just remind you of those kickoff times. The first game, Friday night, Sabadell versus Zamora at the Nova Cruz Alta at 9 o'clock kickoff. And then on Saturday, 6:30 at the Bancal Baledos between Celta Fortuna and Ponfe. Liam, it has been a genuine pleasure once again to talk to you for the penultimate time this season about Primera RF. Thank you for joining me.
Given that we only one goal in 2 games, I think that's pretty good. Just shows how much entertainment you can get out of talking about 2 games with 1 goal in. When it comes to Primera Federación, loads of talking points as always. And been a pleasure as always.
Absolutely. They're like chess games, aren't they? Sometimes you've got to look at the picture going around you sometimes to make a real understanding of them, but so much to play for. So we'll keep you up to date with those results next weekend here at El Podo. But I'll thank you once again for joining us. We'll catch you next week. Hasta luego.